Hi, Todd Kepler here with the Klamath County Museum. Restarting my phone after, for some reason, our phone suddenly shut off. So we tried to get signed back in here. We had as many as 70 people watching our live video stream a few minutes ago. I hope we can get some of those viewers back. Our program has gone on a little longer than we expected, but we've got so many great comments coming in, questions from people. With the number of viewers here. So I see a few people signing back in. I'm going to continue to stall here for a few minutes to see if some more people will be joining us as we try to continue this program and wrap it up with a conclusion here. Again, these are photos from the Bob Lewis collection at the Klamath County Museum. We're restarting our program and gaining a few more viewers here. I was just explaining how all of a sudden my phone died as we were beginning to discuss this photo a couple of minutes ago, but we got it restarted again, and excuse me, hopefully won't have that happen again. Well, we were just talking about this raft being formed. This would have been typical of the many rafts of logs that were pulled across Agency Lake and through the Klamath Strait and then across Upper Klamath Lake and down to the mill at Algoma. This all part of the Algoma Lumber Company operation, moving timber from the Yawkey Tract near Crater Lake National Park down to the mill. The Yawkey Tract, by the way, was left as severely cut over timberland that was eventually acquired by the state of Oregon. I think in the 1930s is when the state of Oregon acquired it and turned it into a state forest and named that forest for Jackson F. Kimball, a longtime forestry professional here in the Klamath Basin. So we now know it as we have Kimball State Park. Excuse me, that was the park that was named for Jackson F. Kimball, but immediately adjacent to Kimball State Park is the Yawkey Tract. That's now Sun Pass State Forest, actually. So this next photo shows a raft of logs. Whether it was the same raft of logs or not, I'm not sure. I rather doubt it. But this shows the other way that the Algoma Lumber Company had to bring logs into the mill. In this particular photo, very faint in the background, we can see Modoc Rim on the east side of Upper Klamath Lake. And so these logs would have come from Sun Pass, what we now call Sun Pass State Forest, up near Crater Lake, through Agency Lake, and then across Upper Klamath Lake, and then down to the mill. According to a story in the Klamath News newspaper, it took about 22 hours for a tug to pull that raft of logs across the lake. One of our museum volunteers that I mentioned earlier, Cliff Ambers, he likes to tell the story that he can remember when he was a youngster going with his family on a trip to Crater Lake. They lived down in the Wokus area, and so they headed north towards Crater Lake, and they saw a raft of logs on its way across Upper Klamath Lake. They spent the day up at Crater Lake and turned around and came home and saw the same raft of logs looking like it had hardly moved on the lake, but it was quite a trip towing upwards of 1 million board feet of logs across Upper Klamath Lake. Here's a photo from inside the box factory at the Algoma Lumber Company. An interesting photo because we don't see that many pictures from inside box factories, nor do we see many pictures with women working in them, but there were a number of women employed in the box factories, especially during the war years. A box factory, by the way, is where thousands, probably millions of pieces of lumber would be sawn into small boards like what you see stacked up here, and then resawed into very, very thin, wafer-thin boards, practically wafer-thin boards that could be assembled into boxes for shipping fruit and vegetables. This would have been in the years in the early 1900s all the way up into the 40s, I think. In the 1950s is when corrugated cardboard started to become more popular and took the place of the old wooden crates. But many of our local lumber mills would have had a box factory to add value to that lumber that was sawn. One of the things that the Bob Lewis collection photo shows is various parts of the lumber operation, including stacking of the lumber. In the early days, this work would have been done by hand. This device allowed lumber stacks to get a lot higher. I think this was called a Hilliker Machine, if I remember that right. So certainly made the work of stacking the lumber for drying much easier. We're now back up to about 31 viewers. We're so sorry to have lost so many viewers when my phone died about, 10 minutes ago. And so we tried to get the phone restarted, and after a couple of minutes we were back in business with this video. So appreciate your patience here. Here's a photo showing a lumber carrier, a Heister lumber carrier at the Algoma Mill. And this photo particularly interesting because this photo was identified as showing the father of the man who collected our photos, Bob Lewis. This was identified as Bob's dad. I don't have the dad's name, but this is the man who worked out at Algoma Lumber Company for so many years and sparked Bob Lewis's interest in the Algoma Lumber Company. So we have a lot of pictures of the Algoma Lumber Company operation. Well, we want to start to move to wrap this program up here. We've been going for more than half an hour. I appreciate everybody's attention here and the questions and comments we've gotten, and continuing to see some thumbs up coming in. So we appreciate that feedback very much. The Bob Lewis collection of logging and lumbering photos includes photos of nearly every major lumber operation in and around Klamath Falls. I wonder if you recognize the landscape here. This is the Shah Bertram Mill, which was out on the south end of Lake Ewanna. In the background here, of course, you can see the familiar outline of Hogback Mountain. You can see some clumps of trees here in the distance. This spot here is where some large cottonwood trees were remaining from the Stucco Ranch. This is in the area where the YMCA is located today. And this hill back here, I believe, is where I think it's Beverly Drive, goes up that hill. And here in the background, I think we can see some rail cars on the Southern Pacific Line. For those of you who are newer to town, Walmart would be just off to the right of this photo over here. The Klamath Livestock Auction also would be off to the right. This particular spot where the Shah Bertram Mill was located is about where the Klamath Industrial Oils recycling plant is for used motor oil. So if you know where that is, that gives you a good location. This is a photo of the big mill, Weyerhaeuser, where Bob Lewis worked. Opened, if I remember right, in 1929. Here's a photo taken from an aircraft looking down on the Weyerhaeuser Mill. All of the structures that you see here in this photo are now gone. The mill closed, I think it was in 1996, and the slab burner is gone. The mill itself and all of the other outbuildings gone. Even the smokestack came down, I think, about 20 years ago. Very memorable sight, watching that smokestack coming down. Other views from the Bob Lewis collection of photos include this one showing Riverside School, looking out across Klamath Falls with the Big Lakes lumber operation. Let's see, this would be the Big Lakes Mill here, where later Modoc Lumber Company had their mill, and the new Fairfield Inn Hotel is being constructed right about in this area now, and so this is the Ewanna Box Factory lumber mill here in the background. Gives you a different perspective for air quality issues. We wouldn't see a site like this today, but this was pretty common in mill towns around the western United States and here in Klamath Falls. One of the interesting stories I've learned just recently is that during the winter time that there would be a problem with black snow falling in Klamath Falls during the winter months, with snow falling through these plumes of black smoke being emitted from either the lumber mills or from the steam plant that was located downtown. We're back up to 42 viewers, so we're getting back to almost to where we were before my phone died about 15 minutes ago. We're going to try to wrap this program up here. We're just looking at a few other odds and ends of photos from the Bob Lewis collection at the Klamath County Museum. I'll let you study this photo for a little bit and see if you can figure out where this is. Obviously, there's a river there. That would be the Klamath River. And the main mill that we're seeing just left of center in this photo here is the old Kesterson lumber mill, known in later years, I think in the 70s and 80s, it was known as DG Shelter, part of the DiGiorgio operation. And so we see stacks of lumber for drying here. And then on the right, we see the old Klamath plywood plant, where now Columbia Plywood is located. All of this area here is part of Reams Golf and Country Club, and here's the clubhouse. Highway 97 came through here in the 1930s, so this photo probably from around 1930 or so, before Highway 97 was constructed across here, with a bridge being put in across the Klamath River in 1936. The Bob Lewis collection of photos includes a number of photos from outside of Klamath Falls. This photo shows a mill. This is the Cilic Windmill in Chiloquin, Oregon. The town of Chiloquin is in the background here. These logs that you see here in the foreground are actually floating on the Sprague River. So this is the Sprague River coming across the foreground, and the Williamson River would have come in from the background, and the two rivers would join just off to the left of this photo. So that's the Chiloquin Mill. Here's the only photo that we have of the McCullough Mill out on Highway 66 west of Keno. This is where Highway 66 crosses the Klamath River. A lot of folks know this spot as Topsy. The only photo that we know of that has survived from that mill that operated in the early 1900s into the 1940s, I think, is this picture here from the Bob Lewis collection. So it shows the Klamath River flowing towards the south here, and the Green Springs Highway, what we now call Highway 66, going across the river in the foreground. Our next photo shows a mill up on Upper Klamath Lake, just north of Geraldine. This was known by various names over the years. It was a smaller mill that had various owners. A lot of the old-timers around here know this as the Boy Scout Mill. It had, as I say, various owners. Ellingson at one point operated this mill, but a lot of folks, a lot of the old-timers around here refer to this mill as the Boy Scout Mill. And just so you know, I'm not making that up. Here's a newspaper clipping from the Herald and News, 1954. This is announcing that the Ellingson Company is buying the El Dorado Mill. That's the old Big Pines Mill downtown. But in this reference, or in this newspaper clipping here, is this paragraph that says that Ellingson will continue operation of the Boy Scout Mill on Upper Klamath Lake. So yeah, we're not making that name up. It's uncertain as to where the name came from. The most popular story, at least the one I like the best, is the one the old-timers tell about how the mill was so poorly run that a group of Boy Scouts probably could have done a better job running the mill. So whether that's this correct story or not, maybe someone knows and can fill us in on that. This shows the Crane lumber mill operation out at Bly. In the background, we can see Highway 140 coming in from Klamath Falls and around the curve there. We still make that curve today when we come into the town of Bly here. And this line that we see across here on the right side of the photo is the Oregon California and Eastern Railroad, the OC&E. Today we know it as the OC&E State Trail. And so this was the Crane Lumber Company operation here at Bly with a lumber mill. Here's their wigwam burner and stacks of lumber drying here. An interesting thing in this photo is that we can see a railroad formation known as a Y. That is a W-Y-E, but it's in the shape of a letter Y, where you could turn rolling stock around. Let's say that you had a locomotive that brought this empty set of cars out from Klamath Falls. You could unhook your engine, your locomotive, your power here, bring it on down the main line, and then back your engine onto the Y here, and throw a switch right about here, and then pull your locomotive back onto the main line here, and hook on to the other end of the cars, and pull them back back towards Klamath Falls. Now, a locomotive doesn't care which direction it's going, but the engineer does like to look towards the front of the engine rather than towards the back all the time. And so it was helpful to be able to turn locomotives around, especially. So every so often in various places around the Klamath Basin, you'll see this formation called a Y. The Bob Lewis collection includes a number of photos from other parts of logging operations, logging and lumbering. Here we see a lumber camp dining hall from the Shah Bertram lumber camp. Good eats, we're told. Every so often there'd be a wreck of some kind, and the Bob Lewis collection includes a number of photos similar to this, mishaps of various kinds. The Bob Lewis collection includes a number of photos not directly related to logging or lumbering, but various scenes from around Klamath Falls and the Klamath Basin. This particular one does show logs in Link River, but the buildings that we see in the background here include the old Westside power plant that began operation in 1908 with water that came from the Westside Canal on Link River and through a flume with a penstock that went down into the turbines inside the powerhouse, and then excess water would fall off the end of the flume and back into Link River. A number of Weisenheimers have observed that this is probably the best set of falls that Klamath Falls ever had. This photo shows the Carnegie Library, built in, I think, 1913 or thereabouts, on some county property on the site where Klamath Union High School stands today. At one time, this was the county library. It then became the library for Klamath Union High School, and then was torn down, I want to say, in the early 1950s to make way for an expansion of Klamath Union High School. It's where Klamath Union High School's cafeteria and music wing is now. A question was asked about whether a Y is the same thing as a switchback. It's not the same as a switchback. The OC&E did have a switchback. It's a fascinating feature in railroad engineering, but a switchback functioned differently. That was for moving trains up and over the top of a hill. And so the hill between, say, Derry and the town of Sprague River is where the OC&E had a switchback to move trains up and over that hill. But entire trains, locomotives and loaded log cars and empty cars and all would be moved over the hill on that switchback. We've gained some more viewers over the last 15 minutes. We're now up to nearly 60 viewers. If you're just joining us again, we're near the tail end of a program by the Klamath County Museum. My name is Todd Keppel. I'm the museum manager for the for Klamath County, and this is our first attempt to put on a program live on Facebook. We appreciate all those that have chimed in. We're hoping to save this as a YouTube video, and so if you get a chance to share it with your friends, check our YouTube channel and see if it shows up there tomorrow, and encourage people to tune in and watch. Just a couple more photos to share with you. This one, of course, showing Link River right here in Klamath Falls. Before the dam was built, in the lower right-hand corner, we can see a canal that's taking off that would have gone to the Moore Lumber Mill, as well as the Martin Grain Mill farther down Link River, and then eventually the Westside Power Plant. And this area here is the intake for the Ankeny Canal. That would have been the predecessor of the A Canal. This view looks to the northwest, so we see Upper Klamath Lake in the background here. This area is where Pelican Marina is today. Putnam Point here. So the Link River Trail that we know today would go down the west side of the river here. And then the falls, for which Klamath Falls is named, is just off of this photo. This is not the falls here, but a little bit farther on down is where the falls were located. We had to throw this building in because it shows the construction of the National Guard Armory in Klamath Falls, where today our museum is housed. So a construction photo from 1935. Another notable building in Klamath Falls, also part of the Bob Lewis collection, the White Pelican Hotel at Main and Esplanade. Bob's photo collection also included some photos of the fire that destroyed the White Pelican Hotel. Terrible loss to the community in 1926. Just 15 years after the grand four-story hotel had opened, it was destroyed by fire. Later, the Seeger building, Ford building, was built on that site. And today, that site is the location of some new construction activity where a new building is planned. Hopefully we'll see that rising here within the next year or so. Also part of the Bob Lewis collection, the display of deer erected in 1940 to impress the Republican candidate that year, Wendell Willkie, who made an unsuccessful run against FDR. And then the last photo that we'll sign off with is kind of a mystery photo. At least it stumped me for a while. I'll let you study this photo while I make a few comments to wind up our program this evening. Again, this has been a live Facebook presentation put on April 2nd, 2020 by the Klamath County Museum. My name is Todd Keppel. We've been showing photos from the Bob Lewis collection, nearly 1,500 photos that were gathered over many years by Klamath Falls resident Bob Lewis. Bob, I told, grew up in Klamath Falls, attended Klamath Union High School, graduated. Bill Anderson was telling me, what did you say, Bill, 1954 maybe, and went to work in a variety of jobs, at one time working for some years as a mechanic for Weyerhaeuser, but throughout much of his life collected these wonderful photos from the Klamath Falls area, mostly on logging and lumbering, but a number of other great scenes like this one, which looks out, I believe, across the intersection of 7th and Walnut Streets. Someone may dispute me on that, and I'd love to hear what ideas others may have, but I believe this is the corner of 7th and Walnut, so the post office building would be built in this area in 1930. Well, that's it. Thank you for the several dozen of you who chimed in tonight to watch. I think we'll try doing this again. It's been a little bit of a challenge, but it's been so much fun putting this together. We appreciate your comments and your likes. Why don't we get together again in a couple of weeks, and we'll do another program. I think we'll do a program on the history of schools in Klamath Falls and the Klamath Basin. Why don't we plan to do that 2 weeks from today? So let's see, that would be April 16th, Thursday night. We'll dig up some photos and get them ready for you. And I hope you spread the word and invite people to join in. Thanks for your comments. Have a good night. Wear your face mask and be well.